action research plan was the impact of cooperative grouping on student collaboration and academic achievement. Try and say that real fast, about 3 times. You'll stumble. So the reason why I did this describes the proposal, but the reason why I chose cooperative grouping and collaboration is because these are 2 components that I've always implemented in my classroom. And I know that these are buzzwords right now in education. These are things that we're constantly talking about. How can we get kids to collaborate more? How can we put them in strategic grouping? And then the real essence of it is, how does that impact academic achievement? Because we know the bottom line is we want kids to achieve, but not just achieve. We want them to actually learn. And we want them to be able to demonstrate that learning in some way. So the bottom question is this. I'm kind of under my, sorry. Okay. How does purposeful cooperative grouping positively impact student collaboration, thus improving academic achievement? That's the main question for my research. So I just want to give you, in essence, what we did. So since I'm in a unique position of being an instructional coach and I don't have a classroom, I had to ask for some assistance. So I asked teachers, and you all got the email, I asked teachers to help me out and if I could borrow their classroom. And so I had 5 teachers, and it was a great cross-section of our building. We had 4 content and 1 off team, I guess I still call it that, so a FACS teacher. So we had math, science, social studies, English, and a FACS teacher. So what we did is we took the first week of the 5-week action research, and we just did some pre-planning. So they took a pre-survey just to tell me what they do in their classroom with cooperative grouping. What do they do with collaboration? What do they see with their students and their academic achievement? And then I asked them if they would consider what content they were going to be working on for the next 4 weeks or through the end of the school year, which again, I know we've already noted, the end of the school year is a kind of tough time to have some action research. So I kind of left them with some freedom. Like Monica was one of my participants, and most of the time at the end of the year in a math class, we're doing a lot of review. So I left it wide open to the teachers of whatever content you're covering, it doesn't matter to me. I'm not asking you to be specific, but what I am asking is that you create a pre-assessment for whatever content you're going to be teaching. And it doesn't have to be huge. It could be 5 questions. But make sure it covers whatever you'll be teaching over the next several weeks. So then we met together, and I gave them some options on what kind of cooperative group could we put together, and then what kind of collaboration task could we implement. And so we did that 3 different times. So they came together, we discussed, and we had to come to a consensus. So all of the teachers would group their students in the same way, and all of the teachers would use the same collaboration task. And then they took those 2 components and they implemented it for a solid week in their classroom. And that didn't mean that they did it for the entire class period. It was a 15-minute segment. And I asked them if they could try and do that at the same time each day that they implemented it. And it wasn't in all of their classes, it was 1 class. Just choose 1 class that you would like to see this unfolded. It could be your best class, it could be your worst class, it could be your middle class, whatever you choose. So they would do that for that week, and then we would come back together. We would just kind of debrief. How was the task? How was your group? How did things go? Teachers would take 2 surveys. One was on collaboration, and one was on the cooperative grouping. And then we would come back together during that meeting, and we would say, okay, what do we want to do this time? What's the new kind of grouping that we want to use, and what's the new collaboration task? So we did that 3 full times, and then the last week was just a wrap-up. Teachers just finalized some surveys for me, and they also did a post-assessment. So I want to show you some choices that they had. When we came together and we had the conversation, we looked at this chart for cooperative grouping. And I did some research to figure out what are some things that teachers are using right now to put students in groups. So they ranged from, the first column just has a lot of data components, maybe classroom data or NWEA data or anything you can come up with that's data driven. The middle one is about multiple intelligences, which we've already heard about today, and similar interests. And then the last column was just kind of a random mixture of types of ways to group students. So maybe alphabetical, maybe gender, maybe age, or a mixture of high, medium, and low. So this took some time, just kind of coming to an agreement on what we would all like to see. Because we've all tried different things, but maybe not something that's on this list. So our group came up with these three groupings for the 3 weeks. So the first week, they chose to put their students in a mixture of high, medium, and low. And then during this conversation, we also talked about, well, what consists of a good sized group? So should it be like half and half? Should I have like 2 groups and they're huge? Should I have partners? What should I do? And we kind of landed on somewhere between 3 and 5 would be good, because it also depended on classroom makeup. Some teachers chose to keep their classes in those small groups through the duration. Some teachers chose to move their kids into those groups throughout the study. So I left them with that freedom, just because everybody's at a different level of comfort when putting students in groups. So I wanted to just have some freedom in that. The second week, it was gender and behavior, and so for lack of a better way of saying it, like good kids with good kids and bad kids with bad kids. And that was interesting because we landed on gender, and then we were like, well, wait a second. Obviously, we have male and female. How are we going to do that? Because we could potentially end up with these 2 huge groups, or one really big one and one small one, depending on the makeup of your class. So that's how we then came up with the behavior aspect. And then the last one they chose was by observed strengths. And we determined that those strengths could be whatever the teacher saw in those students. And then they could determine how to place them in those groups. And then these are the choices that they had for collaboration. Now, in order to get these to fit on here, you're going to see lots of slides, and all of the links do work. So when you go to those links, you'll just see a lot of other resources and suggestions on types of collaboration tasks. I tried to pick some that seemed that it would elicit some writing and some good conversation from the students, and maybe not super formal writing, like there's a few of them that are going to be really short, but one of them is like the 1-minute paper, and then there's another one, it's called affinity mapping. So there's cooperative graffiti, timed pair share, affinity mapping, that one was really cool, philosophical chairs, and hot seat. So the ones that we landed on, the first week they chose affinity mapping, and quite honestly, that one I think is the best one that we experienced. Most teachers had the best responses from their students. So this one, you basically give each group a big piece of poster board or paper, and you give them Post-it notes, or you don't even have to give them all those components. Like in one class, they gave the kids note cards that were all cut up. You give them a big, broad topic, and they write down everything they can think of that goes with that topic. And then, after they're done with that component, then they start arranging everything they've written down, and they put them into groups that are similar. And they're trying to figure out what are the similarities with these pieces. And then everybody comes back together as a class and shares out. The middle one, the 1-minute paper, students are asked 4 questions, and they're asked to respond independently. And then they share as a group on whatever that topic was that was covered that day. The last one, timed pair share, was kind of similar to 1-minute papers. Students are given a topic or some broad-based piece, and they are in their group, and they have a basic share back and forth type of situation. And that, I think, is pretty similar to what we see in classrooms already. We use think, pair, share a lot. So, some conclusions from this. So I had lots and lots of data, so I didn't put it in here because there's a lot of it, because I asked the teachers to take so many surveys on a frequent basis. Overall, to begin with, most teachers do implement some form of group work and collaboration in their classrooms. They enjoyed participating in this. They experienced better results from the groupings and tasks from some than others. So that middle one, the one that was grouped by gender and behavior, that one was probably the one that was the least favored. It was just difficult. And then the timed pair share, it was okay. But I think the very first one, because the students were able to manipulate and move things around and talk a lot, I think that just kind of elicited a different type of collaboration from the students. Overall, they did have an increased satisfaction with their students' academic achievement, and they're interested in continuing to kind of keep these groups going and doing some more collaboration in their classrooms. From the students' perspective, many of the students were familiar with working in groups and with collaboration. Most of them responded well. to being in a specific group and having a specific collaboration task. And then many of the students increased in performance, but similar to some of the other data we've seen today, some of the students did not increase, some of them actually went down. And again, I think you can attribute that to the time of the school year. And then for myself, since I've always, implemented cooperative groups and collaboration tasks in my classrooms, I was interested to just see how it would unfold in other subject areas. I just really enjoyed being in there. So every time the teachers were doing this in their classroom, I tried to be there so I could at least see some component of what was unfolding with the students, and that was always interesting. In one class in particular, there were some kids that I just had a good relationship with, so they always wanted me to come and be part of their group. So I would kind of help, but not really. I just pretended like I was a kid. And then from this study, I truly believe that, implementing cooperative groups, specific cooperative groups, and implementing specific collaboration tasks will increase academic achievement. I know it has an impact, because giving kids that opportunity to sit together and also have a good conversation about something targeted, it just makes sense, and it helps them think differently, and I think learn differently. And then, this is funny. So I was sent this quote. These are just some pictures of the different activities that the kids did, but I thought this was funny. I feel like today was actually productive, but it was also really fun. So that's from a kid's perspective. So they actually realized, hey, I did something, I learned something, but I actually enjoyed it. And that kind of wraps up my study. So what questions do you have for me?
Okay, so did any of your participating teachers talk about like grouping they've done in the past that wasn't specifically strategic, like in the difference?
Yeah, well,
That
we
might be
did.
a bad
At the
question.
beginning of the study, we did talk about that most of the time we just do random groupings and they aren't super specific, which is actually part of why they wanted to participate, to see what would happen if they used the strategic grouping. And then throughout the surveys, their reflections were, this actually did have an impact on the kind of collaboration I received.